I never meant to stay at Terry's Motel. The place looked like it had been forgotten by time itself. But my car had other plans. When the engine started making that awful grinding noise 50 miles from nowhere. The rain had been coming down hard for the past hour. My windshield wipers could barely keep up. The headlights cut through the darkness, but all I could see was empty highway stretching ahead of me. That's when the engine started knocking. A deep, ugly sound that meant expensive repairs. I pressed the gas pedal, but the car only got slower. The neon sign appeared like a miracle through the rain. Terry's Motel, it read, though the Y kept going dark every few seconds. Half the letters were burned out completely, but it was shelter, and that's all I needed. I pulled into the empty parking lot and killed the engine. Steam rose from under the hood. The car gave one last shudder and went silent. The silence hit me first. No highway noise, no insects. Nothing but the electric hum of that dying sign and the steady drum of rain on my roof. I sat there for a minute, trying to decide what to do. My phone showed no signal. The GPS had stopped working 20 miles back. I was completely cut off from the world. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the motel. It was a long, low building with 12 rooms in a row. The paint was peeling and the roof sagged in places, but the office light was on. I grabbed my overnight bag and made a run for it. The rain soaked through my jacket before I made it halfway across the parking lot. The door chimed when I pushed it open. Behind the counter sat a man who looked like he'd been there since the place was built. His hair was white as paper and his eyes were the palest blue I'd ever seen. Deep lines creased his face like cracks in old leather. "Need a room?" he asked before I could speak. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. "Yeah, just for tonight. My car broke down." He nodded like he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. "Got one room left. Lucky you." I looked around the empty parking lot through the window. Rain streaked the glass, but I could see clearly enough. Not a single car in sight except mine. "Just one room? The place looks pretty empty." "Room 7. That's all I got." He slid a key across the counter. The metal was warm against my palm, like someone had been holding it. $50. Cash only." I pulled out my wallet and counted the bills. "Do you have a phone I can use? Mine's not getting any signal." "Phone lines are down. Have been for weeks. Storm knocked out the tower." He pointed toward the ceiling. "Cell service don't reach this far out anyway." "What about a mechanic? Someone who can look at my car?" "Nobody comes out here anymore. Road's been closed on the other side for months. You're stuck till morning at least." I paid him and took the key. It felt heavier than it should have. Old and tarnished, with the number 7 scratched deep into the metal. "Is there anywhere to get food around here?" "Kitchen's closed to outsiders, but I might have something left over from dinner." He studied me with those pale eyes. "You look hungry." "I am. It's been a long day." "Most days are long here. Time moves different when you're stuck in one place." I didn't know what he meant by that, but I was too tired to ask. I just wanted to get to my room and figure out what to do about my car. The rain was still coming down when I stepped outside. I pulled my jacket over my head and ran for room 7. That's when I noticed the cars. Beat-up sedans, rusty pickup trucks, a few motorcycles, all different ages and makes. They were parked in front of the other rooms, lined up neat as you please. But the parking lot had been empty when I drove in. I was sure of it. Maybe I'd missed them in the rain and darkness. Easy to do when you're focused on getting inside. But something about those cars bothered me. They all looked old, Not just used, but old, like they'd been sitting there for years. Room 7 was right in the middle of the row. I slid the key into the lock, and the door opened with a soft click. The room smelled like old cigarettes and cleaning supplies. The carpet was brown and worn thin in places. A single bed sat against the far wall with a nightstand beside it. On the nightstand was a lamp with a yellow shade and a rotary phone that looked like it came from the 70s. A small table and 2 chairs sat by the window. The bathroom was tiny, but clean. Everything looked like it had been frozen in time around 1975. I dropped my bag on the bed and went to close the curtains. That's when I saw them. People. Standing at the windows of the other rooms. Just standing there looking out into the parking lot. Not moving. Not talking. Just watching. The woman in room 6 had gray hair and wore a pink nightgown that looked like it came from another decade. The man in room 8 was younger, maybe 30, with a thick beard and a red flannel shirt. In room 5, a teenage girl pressed her face against the glass. Her breath fogged the window. More faces appeared in other windows. An elderly man in room 3, a middle-aged woman in room 9, a young couple in room 11, all of them just standing there staring out into the rain. I let the curtain fall back into place. Maybe they were just curious about the new guest. People got bored in small towns. I'd probably do the same thing if I lived in a place like this. But something about the way they stood there didn't sit right with me. They were too still, too focused, like they were waiting for something. I tried to shake it off. I was tired and stressed about my car. My mind was playing tricks on me. The bed creaked when I sat down. The mattress was softer than I'd expected. I picked up the phone to try calling a tow truck, but there was no dial tone. Just silence. I tried again, jiggling the hook. Nothing. The old man had been right about the phones being out. A knock at the door made me jump. 3 soft taps, like someone was being careful not to disturb me. "Yeah," I called out. "It's Terry. From the office." I opened the door. The old man stood there with a plate of food covered by a checkered cloth. Steam rose from underneath, and the smell made my stomach growl. "Thought you might be hungry. Kitchen's closed to outsiders, but I made extra." He lifted the cloth to show me what looked like meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Wife's recipe. She passed on years ago, but I still remember how she made it. "That's really nice of you, but I don't want to take your food." "No charge. We take care of our guests here. Don't get many visitors these days." He handed me the plate. The ceramic was warm against my hands. "Road's been closed on the east side since spring. You're the first new face I've seen in months." "Thanks. This smells great." I paused. "Hey, I noticed some other guests at their windows. Are they okay?" They seemed a little odd. Terry's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his pale eyes. "Other guests? What do you mean?" "The people in the other rooms. They were all standing at their windows, looking out. Probably just watching the storm. Not much else to do around here." He stepped back from the door. "You should eat while it's hot. Food gets cold fast in weather like this." Something in his voice made me look at him closer. His pale eyes seemed to glow in the porch light, and his smile didn't quite reach them. "How long have they been staying here?" "Hard to say. Time moves different when you're stuck in one place. Days blend together." He started to walk away, then stopped. "Oh, And don't mind the noise tonight. Old building settles in the rain. Lots of creaks and groans. What about the scratching sounds? Terry turned back to me slowly. Scratching sounds. I thought I heard something earlier, like fingernails on wood. Probably just tree branches against the windows. Storm's got everything moving around. But his eyes told a different story. Get some rest. You'll need your strength for tomorrow. He walked away before I could ask any more questions. I watched him disappear into the office, his footsteps silent on the wet walkway. I went back inside and set the plate on the small table by the window. The food tasted better than it looked. The meatloaf was seasoned perfectly, and the potatoes were creamy and rich, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with this place. As I ate, I kept glancing at the curtains. Were those people still standing at their windows? And why had Terry acted so strange when I mentioned them? I couldn't help myself. I peeked out again. They were all gone. Every window was dark. The parking lot looked normal again. Just a bunch of old cars sitting in the rain. No faces pressed against glass. No one watching. But I knew what I'd seen. Those people had been real. After I finished eating, I tried to settle down for the night. I turned on the old television, but all I got was static. The radio on the nightstand was the same. Nothing but white noise and occasional bursts of what sounded like voices speaking a language I didn't recognize. The rain kept drumming on the roof. Lightning flashed every few minutes, followed by thunder that shook the whole building. The storm was getting worse. I tried to sleep, but every time I started to drift off, I'd hear something. Footsteps on the walkway outside, doors opening and closing, whispered voices that stopped the moment I sat up to listen. Around midnight, the sounds got louder, scraping noises, like someone dragging heavy furniture across the floor in the room next to mine. Then came the tapping, soft at first, just a gentle rhythm against the wall, but it got faster and more insistent, like someone was trying to send me a message in code. I got up and pressed my ear to the wall. The tapping stopped immediately, but now I could hear something else. Breathing. Someone was on the other side of the wall, breathing heavily. "Hello?" I called out softly. The breathing stopped. I waited, but there was no response. Just silence and the sound of rain. I gave up trying to sleep and went to the window again. Maybe I could see what was going on outside. They were back. All of them, standing at their windows like before. But this time, they were all looking directly at my room. At me. The woman in the pink nightgown raised her hand and waved, slow and careful, like she was underwater. The man with the beard did the same. Then the teenage girl. One by one, they all started waving. But their movements were wrong. Too jerky. Too mechanical. Like they were marionettes being controlled by an inexperienced puppeteer. I stepped back from the window so fast I nearly tripped over my back. My hands were shaking as I let the curtain fall back into place. What kind of place was this? Who were these people? And why couldn't I shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen? I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Car trouble or not, I was getting out of here. I'd walk to the highway if I had to. Hitchhike to the nearest town. Anything was better than staying in this place another minute. But when I tried to turn the handle, it wouldn't budge. I pulled and twisted, but the door was stuck tight. The key didn't help either. It turned in the lock, but the door still wouldn't open. Panic started to set in. I was trapped. I went to the back window and tried to open it. The latch was stuck. I pushed harder, using both hands, but it was like the window had been painted shut years ago. The bathroom had a small window too, but it was even smaller and higher up. Even if I could get it open, I'd never fit through. The phone was still dead when I picked it up. No dial tone, no nothing. A soft tapping sound came from the door. Not knocking, just gentle tapping, like someone was drumming their fingers against the wood. "Who's there?" I called out. The tapping stopped. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. Footsteps moved away, but they sounded wrong, too heavy, like whoever was out there was dragging their feet. The tapping started again, but this time it came from the window. I pulled back the curtain just enough to peek out. The woman from room 6 stood right outside my window. Her face was pressed against the glass, and her pale eyes stared right at me. Her mouth moved like she was trying to say something, but no sound came through the glass. Her skin looked strange in the moonlight, too pale, too smooth, like it was made of wax. I let the curtain drop and backed away from the window. The tapping continued, slow and steady, like a clock counting down to something. Then it stopped. Silence filled the room. Even the rain had gone quiet. The only sound was my own breathing and the electric hum of the lamp. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to think. This had to be some kind of joke. Maybe the old man was messing with me. Small town people did weird things sometimes. They probably thought it was funny to scare the outsider, but deep down, I knew this wasn't a joke. The clock on the nightstand read 2:17 a.m. I watched the minute hand, waiting for it to move. 2:17, 2:17, 2:17. The clock had stopped. I picked up my phone to check the time, but the screen was black. Dead battery, even though it had been fully charged when I arrived. The room felt smaller now. The walls seemed closer together, the ceiling lower, like the whole place was slowly squeezing in on me. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were wide and wild. My skin was pale as paper. A new sound started outside, scratching, like fingernails on wood, but louder now, more insistent. I didn't want to look, but I had to know. I crept to the window and lifted the curtain just enough to peek out. The woman was still there, but now she was using her fingernails to scratch something into the door of my room. Deep gouges in the wood, over and over the same motion. Other people had joined her. The man with the beard, the teenage girl, more faces I hadn't seen before. They all stood in a line in front of my door, taking turns scratching at the wood. Their movements were jerky and wrong, like puppets with broken strings, and their eyes were all the same pale blue as Terry's. I wanted to yell at them to stop, but something told me that would be a mistake. Whatever was happening here, I didn't want to draw more attention to myself. The scratching went on for what felt like hours, or maybe minutes. Time didn't seem to work right in this place. Finally, the sound stopped. I looked out again, and the people were gone. But the door to my room was covered in scratches, deep marks that spelled out words I couldn't read. The letters were jagged and sharp, like they'd been carved with claws instead of fingernails. I tried the door again. Still locked tight. That's when I noticed something else. My overnight bag was gone. I searched the whole room, but it wasn't there. Someone had come in and taken it while I was watching the window. But how? The door was locked. The windows were stuck. Unless they had another way in. I got down on my hands and knees and looked under the bed. Nothing but dust and a few dead insects. I checked the bathroom again. Empty. The closet was just a closet, barely big enough for a few hangers. But when I looked up at the ceiling, I saw it. A small panel, painted the same color as the rest of the ceiling, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. The paint around the edges was newer than the rest, like it had been touched up recently. An access panel big enough for someone to crawl through. I pulled the chair over and climbed up to get a closer look. The panel was loose. I pushed on it gently and it moved. Just a little, but enough to confirm my suspicions. Someone had been in my room. They'd crawled through the ceiling while I was distracted by the people at the window. But why take my bag? What could they possibly want with my clothes and toiletries? I climbed down and sat on the bed, trying to make sense of it all. Nothing about this place made sense. The empty parking lot that suddenly had cars, the people at the windows who disappeared and reappeared, the old man who acted like he was hiding something. And now someone was crawling through the ceiling to steal my belongings. I had to get out of here. But first, I needed to find my bag, and I needed answers. The scratching sounds started again around 3 a.m. This time, they were coming from inside the walls, like rats or mice, but bigger, much bigger. I pressed my ear to the wall and listened. The sounds were moving, following some kind of path through the building, from room to room, getting closer to mine. Then they stopped right next to my bed. Something was in the wall, just inches from where I was sitting. I could hear it breathing. Slow, raspy breaths that sounded more like wheezing. I stood up slowly and backed away from the wall. The breathing continued for a few more seconds, then stopped. A new sound started, tapping, but not from outside this time. From inside the wall, the same rhythm I'd heard earlier, but muffled by wood and plaster. The tapping moved along the wall from the bed to the window. Then it stopped at the corner, where the two walls met. I heard a soft click, like a latch being opened. The baseboard at the corner of the room swung inward like a tiny door. It was dark inside, but I could see that it led to some kind of tunnel or crawl space. A hand reached out of the opening, pale and thin, with long fingernails caked in dirt. It felt around on the floor like it was searching for something. I pressed myself against the far wall, trying to stay as quiet as possible. The hand kept searching, moving back and forth across the carpet. Then it found what it was looking for, my shoe, which I'd kicked off earlier. The hand grabbed it and pulled it into the opening. The baseboard swung shut with another soft click. I stood there for a long time, staring at the corner where the hand had been. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure whoever was in the walls could hear it. What did they want with my shoe, and how many of them were in there? I had to assume there were tunnels throughout the whole building. That's how they'd been moving around without being seen. That's how they'd gotten into my room to take my bag. But why were they collecting my things? What were they planning to do with them? The rest of the night passed in a blur of strange sounds and half-glimpsed movements, shadows that moved when they shouldn't, whispers that came from empty air, the feeling of being watched even when I couldn't see anyone. By the time dawn broke, I was exhausted and terrified. But I was also angry. These people, whoever they were, had no right to trap me here, no right to steal my belongings or scare me half to death. I was going to get answers, and I was going to get out of here. The first thing I tried was the door again, still locked tight, but the scratches were clearer now in the morning light. They weren't random marks, they were letters, names carved deep into the wood. Sarah Collins, 1987, Mike Torres, 1991. Jenny Wright, 1995. David Huang, 2003. Lisa Martinez, 2007. Robert Jones, 2012. The list went on and on. Dozens of names, all carved in the same jagged style, all with dates going back decades. At the bottom of the list, still fresh and bleeding wood chips, was a new name being carved. Alex. My name. Someone had started carving my name into the door. I pounded on the door with both fists. "Let me out! You can't keep me here!" No answer. But I could hear movement in the other rooms. Footsteps, voices, the sound of doors opening and closing. I went to the window and looked out. The parking lot was full now. More cars than I'd seen before. Old ones, new ones, everything in between. But they all had one thing in common. They were all covered in dust and dirt, like they'd been sitting there for years. My car was gone. In its place sat an old pickup truck with rust around the wheels and a cracked windshield. Had that always been there? I couldn't remember anymore. Everything about this place seemed to shift and change when I wasn't looking. I tried the bathroom window again. This time it opened easily. But when I looked outside, I didn't see the back of the motel. I saw room 7, the same room I was standing in. It was impossible. I was looking at myself through the bathroom window. But the other me was facing the wrong direction, looking toward the bed instead of the window. I blinked hard and looked again. Now, the window showed the back wall of the motel, like it should. But for a moment, I could have sworn I was looking at myself. Time was definitely not working right in this place. I spent the next hour searching every inch of the room for another way out. I checked the walls for loose panels. I looked for hidden doors. I even tried prying up the floorboards with the metal letter opener I found in the nightstand drawer. Nothing. The room was sealed tight. But I did find something interesting. Under the carpet near the corner where I'd seen the hand, I found a loose floorboard. When I pried it up, I discovered a small space underneath. It was full of personal belongings, wallets, jewelry, clothing, car keys. All of it old and covered in dust. I picked up one of the wallets and opened it. The driver's license inside showed a woman named Sarah Collins. The photo was faded, but I could see she had dark hair and a kind smile. The license was issued in 1987. Sarah Collins. The first name on the list carved into my door. I checked another wallet, Mike Torres, 1991. Another name from the door. All of these belongings came from the people whose names were carved into the wood. People who had stayed in room 7 and never left. But where were they now? What had happened to them? A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. 3 gentle taps, just like the night before. "It's Terry. You doing okay in there?" I marched to the door and pounded on it. "Let me out, right now." "Door's not locked from this side. Must be stuck. Old building, you know. Things swell up in the humidity." "Don't lie to me. I know what you're doing here. I found the belongings. I saw the names on the door." Silence for a moment. Then Terry's voice, quieter now. "Why don't you calm down? Getting upset won't help anything." "Where are they? The people whose names are on this door? What did you do to them?" "They're around, safe and sound, just like you'll be." "I want to see them. I want proof they're okay." Another pause. "All right. If that's what it takes, look out your front window." I went to the window and pulled back the curtain. The people were there again, standing at their windows. But this time they weren't just watching. They were holding up signs. The woman in the pink nightgown held a piece of cardboard that read, Sarah Collins, 1987. The man with the beard held one that said Mike Torres, 1991. The teenage girl's sign read Jenny Wright, 1995. All of them, all the names from the door, they were all there looking exactly the same as they had in their driver's license photos. But that was impossible. Sarah Collins should be in her 60s by now, not the young woman I saw at the window. Mike Torres should be in his 50s. Jenny Wright should be in her 30s. They all looked exactly the same age as when they'd first arrived. How? I whispered. Terry's voice came through the door. Room 7's special, always has been. Time works different here. People don't age the way they should. They don't change. They just are. That's impossible. Is it? You've been here one night, but it feels longer, doesn't it? Like you've been here for days, weeks, maybe longer. He was right. I couldn't remember what day it was when I'd arrived. Was it Tuesday? Wednesday? The memories were fuzzy, like they belonged to someone else. What do you want from me? Nothing you're not already giving. Room 7 needs an occupant. It's been empty too long. The others were getting restless. The others? The previous guests. They're still here, of course. Still part of the family. But they need someone new to welcome. Someone to join them. I looked out the window again. The people were gone, but their signs remained, scattered on the ground like fallen leaves. I don't want to join them. I want to leave. Everyone wants to leave at first, but you'll change your mind. They all do, eventually. Time has a way of wearing down resistance. How long have you been doing this? Since I was young. My father ran this place before me. His father before him. It's a family business, you might say. Your family kidnaps people? We don't kidnap anyone. People come here of their own free will. Their cars break down. They need a place to stay. We provide that. But you don't let them leave. They don't want to leave, not after they understand what we're offering. Eternal life, never growing old, never dying, never having to worry about the future because the future never comes. That's not life. That's imprisonment. Is it? Ask them yourself. The tapping started again, but this time it was coming from all around me. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, like the whole building was alive and trying to communicate. The sounds formed a pattern, a rhythm that almost sounded like music, sad and beautiful and lonely. It was the sound of people who had been trapped for decades, trying to welcome a new member to their eternal family. I sat down on the bed and put my head in my hands. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be something I could do. But deep down, I was starting to wonder if Terry was right. How long had I been here? The memories of my life before the motel were getting hazier by the hour. Had I really been driving somewhere? Did I really have a job to get back to? Or were those just dreams I'd been having? The room felt more familiar now. The brown carpet, the yellow lampshade, the rotary phone that never worked. Like I'd been here for years instead of hours. Maybe this was home. Maybe it had always been home. The people at the windows waved at me again when I looked out, but this time, their waves seemed friendly, welcoming, like they were genuinely happy to see me. I found myself waving back, My bag sat on the floor of the office when I finally managed to break down the door the next morning. Or maybe it was the same morning. Time had lost all meaning in room 7. Terry was behind the counter like always, reading a newspaper that looked years old. The headline read, "Reagan wins second term," in faded black letters. "Find everything you need?" he asked without looking up. "You people are sick. All of you. I'm calling the police." Phone's still out. He turned a page. The paper crackled like old leaves. Besides, what would you tell them? That the other guests were friendly? That they wanted to welcome you? They were scratching at my door. They crawled through the ceiling. They stole my stuff. Did they hurt you? I opened my mouth to answer, but stopped. They hadn't hurt me. They'd scared me, confused me, made me question my own sanity. But no one had actually touched me. I want to leave. Now. Terry folded his newspaper and looked at me with those pale eyes. "Your car's not fixed yet." "I'll walk. I'll hitchhike. I don't care. Long way to anywhere from here. Road's still closed on the east side. Might be closed on the west side too by now. Hard to say. I'll take my chances. Suit yourself. But you might want to think about this first." He pointed to something behind me. I turned around and saw a wall covered with photographs. Dozens of them, all showing the same thing. People standing at the windows of the motel rooms, the same people I'd seen over and over again. But these photos were old. The edges were yellow and curled. Some looked like they'd been taken 20 or 30 years ago. And in every single photo, the people looked exactly the same. Same clothes, same faces, same age. "They've been here a long time," Terry said. "Longer than you might think." "What are you talking about?" "Time's funny here. Always has been. Some places are like that. Thin spots, my grandfather used to call them. Places where the normal rules don't apply." I stared at the photos. In one of them, I could see my room in the background. Room 7. And standing at the window was a man in a blue shirt and jeans. The same clothes I was wearing. But the photo was faded and yellowed like all the others. Like it had been taken years ago. "That's impossible. I just got here yesterday." Terry smiled. "Did you? Time's funny here. Days blend together. Nights last longer than they should. People lose track. You're crazy. All of you." I turned to leave, but Terry's voice stopped me. "Check your pockets." I didn't want to, but I did. My wallet was there. My keys. But something else too. Something that hadn't been there before. A key. Old and tarnished. The number 7 was scratched into the metal. The same key Terry had given me when I checked in. But I'd left it in the room when I broke down the door. "You're one of us now," Terry said. "The others will be happy to have some company. Gets lonely here, even with all the guests." I threw the key at him and ran for the door. But when I pushed it open, I wasn't outside. I was back in room 7. The door slammed shut behind me. The lock clicked. I tried the handle, but it wouldn't turn. I was trapped again. But this time was different. This time I could hear them clearly. Voices in the walls, whispers in the pipes, people talking in rooms that should have been empty. And they were all saying the same thing. "Welcome home, welcome home, welcome home." I pounded on the door and screamed for help, but no one came. No one except the others. They pressed their faces to my window and smiled. The woman in the pink nightgown, the man with the beard, the teenage girl, all of them. And now I understood. They weren't trying to scare me. They were trying to welcome me, because I was one of them now. The scratches on my door weren't just names. They were a record. A history of everyone who had stayed in room 7. Everyone who had become part of the family. I found a pen in the nightstand drawer and walked to the door. My hand moved by itself as I carved my name under the others. Alex Rivera, 2024. It felt right. Like signing a contract I'd been meaning to sign for years. The voices in the walls got louder. Happy voices, excited voices. They were glad I'd finally accepted what I was, what I'd always been. I went to the window and looked out at the parking lot. My car was gone. In its place sat an old pickup truck with rust around the wheels. Had that always been there? I couldn't remember. My memories from before the motel were fading fast, like smoke in the wind. But that was okay. I didn't need those memories anymore. I had new memories now, better memories. Time moved differently here. Minutes stretched into hours, hours compressed into seconds. Yesterday felt like 100 years ago. Tomorrow might never come. But that was the beauty of it. No tomorrow meant no deadlines, no stress, no aging, no death, just an endless present, filled with the company of people who understood what it was like to be chosen. I pressed my face to the glass and waited for the next guest to arrive. Terry always had one room available, room 7. It was special that way. The woman in room 6 waved at me from her window. Sarah Collins, though she looked nothing like the faded driver's license photo I'd found. She was young and beautiful, frozen at the moment she'd first arrived in 1987. I waved back. We were neighbors now. We'd be neighbors forever. The neon sign buzzed and flickered outside. Terry's Motel, it read, though the Y kept going dark every few seconds. Some things never changed. And some things changed so slowly you didn't notice until it was too late. A new car pulled into the parking lot just as the sun was setting. A sedan with out-of-state plates. The engine was making a terrible grinding noise. I watched the driver get out and look around. She was young, maybe 22. She grabbed a bag from the back seat and headed for the office. Poor girl. Her car had broken down 50 miles from nowhere, but she was lucky. Terry always had one room available. I started tapping on my window, gentle taps like drumming my fingers against the glass. The others joined in, all of us together, welcoming our new neighbor. The woman looked up at our windows and frowned. She probably thought we were strange, but she'd understand soon enough. We all did, eventually. Terry would give her the key to room 7, the same key I'd thrown at him, the same key that was now in my pocket again, waiting for the next guest. She would try to leave in the morning, they always did. But room 7 had a way of bringing people home, and we'd be here waiting when she came back, all of us together. One big happy family that would never grow old, never change, never die. The scratching started again as night fell. New marks on the door, getting ready for another name. Melissa Torres, 2024. I smiled and pressed my face closer to the glass. Time was funny here, but some things never changed. Terry's Motel always had one room available. And once you stayed in room 7, you never really left. You just became part of the family, part of the history, part of the endless present that stretched out like a comfortable dream. The neon sign buzzed and flickered in the dark. The Y went out again, like it always did. But that was okay. We didn't need light to see each other. We had forever to get acquainted, forever and a day. And sometimes, when the wind was just right and the moon was full, you could hear us singing, all of us together, welcoming the next guest home. Welcome to Terry's Motel. Checkout time is never.